Hey everybody, it's Nate McMurray. I am here tonight with one of our newest additions to our team, and I want to introduce her to everybody. Her name is Bari. Bari, reveal yourself.
Hey, I'm
Oh, there
Bari.
you are. Hey,
Nice
Bari.
to meet y'all. My
So,
name is Bari, as
Bari,
Nate
hold up, hold
said.
up, hold up. I want to explain something before we talk. Bari, the comments are going to be live on the screen today, right, Torin? Okay, I think so. So we're going to see the comments on the screen so you guys can see yourself talking to me. Okay, Bari, who are you?
Who am I? I am a young farmer and also a grassroots community organizer. I spent 3 years managing a diversified farm in the Catskills before I moved up to Western New York to start a farm of my own on the borders of Erie and Wyoming counties. And I also do a lot of advocacy work with National Young Farmers Coalition. I'm on their federal policy committee as the Women's Affinity representative. So I represent women farmers all throughout the United States in our policy platform. And I'm also the farmer representative with Northeast SARE, which is the Sustainable Agriculture Resource and Education Group that's funded by the US Farm Bill.
Well, thank you for being on, Bari. And why is your name Bari?
My name is Bari because I am from a Long Island Jewish household, and we like to name our children after deceased relatives. So I needed a B name after my two great grandmothers on my mother's and father's side. And I'm not sure how they came up with Bari exactly, but they needed a B and they got one.
Bari, I love that name. It's great.
Thank you.
It's a great name. It's a charismatic and it sticks in your head. But I have to admit, when they told me we hired Bari, I was surprised when I saw your picture. I was like, and I saw your image. I was like, I thought I made a mistake, but it's your name, Bari. So pleased to meet you, Bari.
Nice to meet you too.
And then, so you're a farmer from
Yes.
the Catskills, right?
Originally from Long Island, but I spent the last 3 years in the Catskills, and before that, I
Farming
worked
in the
on
Catskills?
managing a
What kind
farm
of
there.
farming? You're managing someone else's farm.
I was managing a nonprofit educational and production farm at Frost Valley YMCA, which is a world-leading outdoor education nonprofit.
So you had people visit the farm and learn about farming and stuff like that.
Exactly.
And you're
During
like,
the summer.
I want to do this myself.
Well, so before that, I had worked on an organic permaculture farm in the foothills of North Carolina, a commercial farm. And I actually, during my time farming there, I was studying for the LSAT with my headlamp on. I was living in a camper, studying in the morning and the night after my long days on the farm. And I took the LSAT in North Carolina. And what I wanted to do was advocate for farm worker rights, which is something that I had done at SUNY Geneseo with the Student Coalition for Migrant Workers that I co-founded there. But I realized
You co-founded that group?
I did.
Good for you. Good for
With
you.
my friend Danny Ruiz. And I realized how much power I had as a farmer to influence structural change on a local to federal scale. I was previously on Congressman Delgado's Agricultural Advisory Committee and had done a lot of work in the Catskills with Delgado and our New York State Ag Chairwoman Metzger.
You ever read My Side of the Mountain?
I have not read it.
Oh gosh, it's a classic. It's about a young man who runs away from New York City and he finds his family's ancestral property in the Catskills and he lives in the woods by himself in a hollowed out tree. It's every young man and young woman when I was young read that book. And I read it to my kids. It's great. I thought you might have read it because of the Catskill connection. It's fantastic.
I'll have to give it a read.
Yeah, he learns how to fish for freshwater mussels and he makes his own hooks and he befriends an eagle. It's a great kids book. Anyway, so your farm now is what exactly, Bari?
It's a hayfield. So I purchased some vacant property, quote unquote vacant property. It was actually ag zoned, but it was divided into two different parcels for residential development. So I like to say that I rescued the farm from development to stay in agriculture. But it's a hayfield. As a young farmer, farming's extremely capital intensive, and access to land is a real barrier for young farmers like myself. So the trade-off was I bought a cheaper piece of land with a pretty good location in terms of proximity to Buffalo and larger markets. But the downside is that now I have a lot of money to invest in irrigation, in infrastructure, etc. So right now it's a vacant hayfield, and it is in the process of being converted into a vegetable garden. And I'm hoping to drill a well and install a road this season before
Good for
winter
you.
sets in.
When can I visit the land?
Anytime. It's
Great.
on Route 78 in Java Village.
And just so people here know, our land is exceptional, correct?
It is. We have some prime soils, and that's why it's so important that farmers are supported in stewarding the land and implementing climate resilient practices that really focus on soil health, because we lose just a crazy amount of topsoil every day and a crazy amount of farmland every day. And our average age of a farmer, from poor soil health management, from really extensive tillage, from leaving the soil fallow and bare.
Because I've seen some farms that are just basically clay that's almost unplantable or it's not arable any longer. It's over the years.
So you have your parent soil type, and some soil parent types are better for farming. So for example, clay soils are not as permeable for water, but they hold on to nutrients really well. And on the other side of the spectrum, you have sandy soils that are really well draining if you have heavy rains, but they will bleed out minerals and nutrients really quickly. A lot of Western New York soils are considered prime soils, or soils of national importance, because they're really nice loams. But again, if you do treat your soil poorly over the course of time, the ecosystem, the biology within the soil becomes degraded, and the physical and chemical and biological properties of the soil make it unplantable and potentially permanently unarable.
I got you. Well, listen, it's great to talk to you. I love what you're doing. I love that people as exceptional as you and as interesting as you are part of this team. And that goes for, I think we have the best team we ever had right now. There's so many smart young people that we've recruited, and you're great. And I'm glad that you're doing field, and field is making phone calls just like I do every day. And I do different type of phone calls, but you're doing phone calls to get people out to vote, right?
Yep. So right now we're focused on doing a lot of volunteer outreach. So that means that we garner support for volunteers, we train those volunteers, and then we mobilize them to train other folks in phone banking or text banking, so they can then get out the vote for Nate. So really, we're calling in our community members to call in their community members in order to garner support.
And who's our key demographic that we're going for?
Our key demographic for volunteer leads are folks who are consistent Democratic supporters who show up and turn out to elections, as well as folks who have volunteered for yourself in the past few years, or have volunteered in general for local Dems.
So we're trying to charge up the base.
Mm-hmm.
I got to say, look, I know you advocated for the green light law that's now law. I did too, and I took a lot of hell for it. I tell you why I advocated for it, because it's decent not to leave people trapped. That's it. I try to treat people like I'd want to be treated. And I've met enough migrant people who are here helping our community to realize they got to get groceries too. And asking them to do it in a way that's dangerous in a car without insurance is wrong. And trapping them in territory they can't move is wrong. And I advocated for it, and I took a lot of heat for it. I think the only other Western New Yorker that I think advocated for it was Tim Kennedy. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. But listen, I'm proud to have done it, and I will have look. If you're someone who's struggling, who's a decent person, I will have your back. And I'm proud that I have people on my team that were doing that on a really grassroots level. And I think without people like you who advocated for it, these good laws don't get passed.
Yeah, and I think a rising tide really does lift all ships, and I think that's certainly the case in agriculture. I think it's really unfortunate that there's a lot of infighting between farmers and farm workers. I think that they should be united and be working together and have common goals. And I think that they do. But I think, unfortunately, we've created such an untenable situation for farmers where they really can't make a living on the land doing good, honest, and hard work. And that's really unfortunate. And the result of that, the consequences of that is that we have farm workers who don't have basic protections that other workers are afforded, and that they are treated, for all intents and purposes, like second-class citizens or even worse. And I think that if we create a system where farmers can have quality of life and actually earn parity, then again, we lift the tide for both farmers and farm workers.
You just nailed the right issue. I mean, our farmers can't survive like this. I think people in Western New York need to realize that most of these farms are failing, and the farmers are struggling, and the workers are struggling, and it's just a untenable situation. And I always say to everybody, this is a national security issue. It's a national security issue because if our farms are not successful, where do we get food from? Where do we get milk from? Overseas. So I will treat farming as a national security issue when I'm in Congress. You have my oath and my promise. Okay. I can't really see the screen if we have questions. I'll be honest with you. I'm trying to look on the screen here. Do we have questions? Sorry, Bari.
While you're looking for questions, I will say that's a great point. I think that farming brings so much value to our rural economies, to our food security, and as well in fighting the good fight against climate change. Our agricultural soils have an immense capacity to sequester carbon and actually not only mitigate the effects of climate change, but start to reverse climate change if we're using agriculture as a tool in the proper way. And I think that incentivizing the implementation of these soil health and climate resilient practices, that direct compensation for farmers can go a long way in solving this climate crisis, solving this food security crisis, but also ensuring that farmers are able to come closer in filling that gap between cost of production and market value. They just need that. They need that structural help. And I think that it's right that we give it to them.
Break it down into simple language so everyone out there can understand. Give me a one sentence on that.
So
say that again.
Basically, our plants photosynthesize, they sequester carbon in our soils. The more that we don't disturb the soil and that we keep the soil covered, the more carbon the soil will hold. And that's atmospheric carbon that's then stored in our soils as a sink. And if we pay farmers for doing that work of protecting our soil and the health of our soil, those farmers will be more productive in terms of their yields. And also, if we pay them to do that, if we incentivize that and subsidize that rather than the crappy farming models that we do subsidize, then farmers will actually have a chance at earning past the cost of production.
What about changing the crops and converting the crops to other things? What other crops should people consider?
Well, I think it comes down to also a matter of aggregation and distribution and processing regionally. I think we don't have the infrastructure to support processing in our region, especially processing of meat and livestock. But I think if we invest in Western New York aggregation, distribution, and processing, then farmers in Western New York can actually feed Western New Yorkers. Huge demand for local product for individuals.
Huge, yeah.
And as well as institutions, for example, farm to school. We just have to have the infrastructure to accommodate those crops being grown by farmers, create a market for those crops, and then farmers will have better markets, more competitive markets, and also feed our local people.
Well, Bari, I am looking forward to working with you on all this when we get to Washington, and I am looking forward to visiting your farm, eating some nuts, and whatever else you got going.
The nuts will be about 7 years down the. We'll have to wait for your second term for the nuts.
Oh, good. Maybe my third term. Yeah, it's a lot of nuts. What kind of nuts are you aiming for?
I would really like to grow chestnuts. I don't know if you know the story of chestnuts in America.
No, tell me.
So chestnuts were one of our most prolific trees in America and one of our best food sources. But because of the blight that happened, the chestnut trees were completely overlogged and overharvested. And so what that did was any tree that was potentially resistant to the blight was eliminated and chopped down. So we lost the American chestnut. And there's some great breeding efforts going on right now to restore the American chestnut. But the best we can do right now are European and Chinese chestnuts. But yeah, it was kind of an ecological
I had
and
a huge chestnut
travesty.
tree in my yard. It like produced lots of chestnuts, and I remember we used to collect them and barter with them as children.
Hmm.
So I was like a banker. I had bags and bags of chestnuts, and then we would barter with those chestnuts.
Yeah,
Listen,
they're great. They're a
and
great food source.
when I was in Asia, I ate chestnuts all the time.
Yeah,
Like
so
chestnuts were part of the seasonal food.
that's another part of this whole agricultural equation is encouraging farmers to plant perennials. When you plant a perennial, you're not tilling the soil year after year. And also, you only plant it once. So, potentially, the labor it takes to cultivate and harvest from that perennial is far less. But again, with chestnuts, we simply don't have the infrastructure in Western New York to process them. We could make great grain and great flour out of chestnuts and so many
But
products.
why can't we just do what they do in Asia and just roast them?
You could roast them, but then we have to develop a market for them. And that's the second part of the equation.
I'll work on that market because I love them.
Okay. Get the word
I,
out about
I
chestnuts.
really do. We actually eat chestnuts all the time in my house. Well, I just
Yeah,
get them from I
they're
get
a
them from
great source
Canada.
of carbs, of
Yeah,
protein, of fats. Hmm.
yeah. Good for you. Do the chestnuts. I can't wait. My family will be out at the farm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So
this.
that's
Go
part of
ahead.
the
I'm sorry.
equation is encouraging farmers to grow crops that don't require the devastation of our soils, but actually improve our soils.
With the addition of Barry, I can honestly say we have a brilliant team. These kids are so. I mean, sorry to call you kids, but you're much younger than me. That was inappropriate. I'm sorry. These young people are brilliant. They really are, and they've made me better already. Thank you to all of you, um, and I appreciate you guys, and I appreciate the people that are watching. Barry, you want to stay on with me while I talk about something else? You don't have to.
I'd love to stay on with you. I'm seeing a comment now that says, don't forget 100 global companies create 70% of all emissions. And that's so true. It shouldn't be the burden of farmers to bear to shoulder the climate crisis. But farmers do need support in doing the important work of mitigating climate change.
I
But
was on
yeah,
a
we have to
call. I
hold
was
those
on a
companies
call.
accountable.
I was on a Zoom call with a bunch of Congress people the other day, and the whole subject matter of the Zoom call was how we can talk about climate change in a way that's acceptable to regular people. And I was like, I think this conversation is 10 years old. I was like, listen, I've always talked about climate change. It's a winning issue. All the unions want to be invested in green technology. Most people get it because they see the sea rise in Lake Ontario. They see the degradation of the soil. They see what's happening in they see the weather changing. They see what's happening in Lake Erie. They see the demonic snowstorms that we have. They see what's happening in California. Um, they get it. They get it. So I think we need to talk about climate change more boldly. It's a serious issue. It's going to affect you, Barry, but it's going to affect my children even more. And the danger is now. The crisis is now.
Yeah, and we're seeing it. We saw smoke from fires, you know, in our fields here in New York because the smoke was carried in the wind. And in New York State here, we had one of the shortest growing seasons on record with one of the latest frosts, followed by one of the earliest frosts, interspersed with one of the hottest summers on record. So we're seeing the effects in real time.
So I want to go to a controversial subject. I never shy away from controversy. Is that going to bother you?
No, not at all.
Okay, let's go to a really controversial subject. When I went to the, what was the group you founded again?
Student Coalition for Migrant Workers.
So I went to the school to speak when I was running against Chris Collins, and your group cornered me, and they were like berating me about how I was just a stupid politician and politicians were doing it. I was like, guys, I am openly advocating for everything you guys are advocating for. I'm like, can you please pick your enemies better? Did you advocate for that takedown, Barry?
No, I think I had graduated at that point. I graduated in December 2016. But I actually was able to graduate early because I was interning on an organic farm locally, and I did a directed study, sort of like a thesis on the structural violence of the US migrant immigrant farm labor system. So I basically kind of created two courses that didn't exist for myself to enable me to
Good for
graduate
you.
early.
So you kind of enabled your own course. That's the way everyone should be able to do, by the way. Be able to
Hmm.
like, dictate your fate in some respect. No, I'm just kidding to the people who harass me. Listen, I like it. Be passionate. I'm just being silly. You need to be aggressive. And I did my best to try to tell you guys I was on your side, but it didn't really work. But
Think that so many, your gripe with a lot of the politicians these days is that they represent the 1%. They don't represent the working class people. And again, it comes down to those 1%ers want to distract us by pitting working class people against each other. And that is how this whole situation where farmers and farm workers are disunited manifested is the 1% distracting
well,
real
almost
issues.
everybody watching this, everybody on my Facebook page, you guys don't understand. You are not the 1%. Let's say you got a couple cars and a few $100,000 in the bank. You are not the 1%. There is a group of people in this country that control most of the wealth. And they try to divide the guy who has the Cadillac against the guy who has the jalopy because they want to split us up. They try to divide the poor white guy versus the poor black guy because they want to split us up. They want you to hate the migrant worker, and while you're also struggling because they wanted to split us up. People of a like cause should be banded together because we are entering an era of oligarchy controlled by the most elite, like Russia, and we better wake up. And to that respect, I'm going to talk about, I don't want to talk about Michael Caputo, but I think I should because I got some heat from him today. I've been taking heat from Michael Caputo for 3 years. He's attacked my family. He's lied about me. He incessantly worked to get Chris Collins elected. How did that go for us in New York? How many rallies did he have? He brought Steve Bannon here to rally on behalf of Chris Collins. So what I said is, Barry, tell me the truth. I'm willing to take your abuse on this. I took the abuse from the people at Geneseo. I said earlier, because the news out is that he has cancer. No one would wish cancer on anybody. But I said, I wish death on no one. But this man will enjoy the best public health care imaginable while denying millions the same and lying to us about a virus that's killing us. My pity is limited. Now, I didn't say I have no pity for him or his family, especially his family. I pity his family. No one wants to wish their father or the patriarch of a family to be lost. No one wants that. No one wants death. I mean, it's a horrible part of life that we all have to deal with death. And I don't wish death on my worst enemy. And that's what I said. Now, before I go any further, are my comments completely out of line, you think? Tell me the truth.
Well,
I think
that's a tangible exemplification of the 1% representation pitting working class folks against each other and denying working class folks access to our most basic rights, our rights to be healthy, our rights to be treated with humanity. And I think that you highlighted a really important issue, and that, of course, it sucks to have cancer and we empathize with that, but it also, there's hundreds of thousands of people in our country every day who can't see a doctor because they simply can't afford it, including a lot of young farmers like myself.
And we have a president who is gutting the Affordable Care Act. He's going to deny millions of people health care. He is bringing a lawsuit to take away pre-existing conditions. And he has lied to us about a virus that's killed 200,000 people that may lead up to 500,000 people being dead because we are not organized on this and people continue to think it's fake. And one of his sycophants that helps serve this cause is now sick. Now, the question is, what do we do about people like him in our society? People who have done horrific things and said horrific things. Let's be honest about who Michael Caputo is. I mean, the outrage about what I said, which I said, I have a modicum of pity for him. I don't wish him death, but we have to understand this person has a record that is terribly troubling. He's a person who's attacked women online repeatedly, said some of the most vile and racist things. lied to politicians, lied to the American people. It has been complete. Listen, I think we as Democrats are too soft. And as soon as someone says you shouldn't say that, we're unassailable. Don't talk about the president. Let me say this to you right now. I'm not one of those people. I will fight and I will say what I believe. And I believe that Michael Caputo, it's a pity that he is sick, but it's just like I said, and there should be some pity for him, but there is not a tribute to the man because he's sick. He should be held accountable for his crimes. And I use that word without restraint. He should be held accountable for his crimes. And the people of Western New York know this. And the people of Western New York that are on the right side of history believe this. He's someone who's lied to you. He's someone that is partially responsible for a horrible man becoming elected in Chris Collins. He is somebody who has worked in a treasonous nature to deceive the American people about a killer virus. And I'm sorry he's sick, but none of that changes. And the fact that he works so hard to deny others health care when he will get the best health care available. Government health care, by the way. It needs to be stated. And I'm going to state it. And I'm going to call out hypocrisy when I see it. Go ahead. What were you saying?
I think that's part of the reason why I wanted to join the campaign is the accountability, the transparency, and the integrity. I think that for so many of us, that is what aligns with our values, and that is our true moral compass. And we need to see that reflected in who represents us in Congress.
So I will say this about Michael Caputo. He is a smart guy. He has got talents. One of my favorite things about him is when he was young, he fought to have Twin Peaks put back on the air. It's kind of a weird little factoid, but he has used those talents for evil, for wrong. And I hope he recovers. And when he recovers, we are going to hold him accountable for lying to the American people. And I'm going to be one of the people that stands up to say, we need to do this. And I'm one of the people that's going to fight against the president when the president, if he tries to steal this election. I'm going to be one of the people out there fighting. And I'm not going to go away, and I'm not going to be bullied or intimidated. I am here to stay. And I'm going to be here fighting for what I believe in. And I'll say to the people of Western New York, I ain't perfect. Barry, you got to know as a new team member, I'm not perfect. I am far from it. But I am sincere, and I try to be true to my values. My values say I have to stand for something more than just my own election. I have to stand for something more than just my own advancement. And sometimes that takes me down some dangerous roads, but it's who I am and what I got to be so I can live with myself and I can look myself in the mirror. Go ahead, Barry, if you got anything to say.
Yeah, I think that part of being a U.S. Congress representative is that, yes, you represent folks in your district, but you're also standing for something that affects us on a federal and national level. And it is bigger than just the people in New York 27. It's about representing.
I lost you. You there? We lost Barry. Is she coming back? It's okay. We'll get her back. As we wait for Barry to get back, thank you for saying you appreciate me. Thank you for having my back. Michelle Schmidt, thanks for having my back. Christopher, always thank you for being on here. Cattaraugus County Young Democrats. Young farmers are our future. Yes, they are. Yes, they are, Cattaraugus County Young Democrats. Thank you for joining the feed here, Cattaraugus County Young Democrats. And thank you for the 24 people on the line right now. Look, we're going to fight to the end. We got 4 weeks to go. Can we get Barry back? If we can, I'd like it. By the way, thank you for the donations from the people watching. We're trying to hit our goal, and that helps dramatically. Listen, while I got you on the line, everybody, I read this article today in Politico. I'm going to read a little bit of it. Trump's team plots his own departure, even if he won't. President Trump refuses to commit to a peaceful transfer of power if he loses, but his team is carefully developing plans for that very outcome. One of the most organized and functional parts of the Trump White House these days is a surprising place, the West Wing office planning a potential presidential transition. As the president rails against mail-in ballots, etc., His assistant to the president, Chris Little, has spent weeks mapping out the handover of power to Democrat Joe Biden. Little has met with congressionally mandated deadlines to file 2 different transition reports in May and August. He's working closely with career government official who is serving as the federal transition coordinator. They are very, very focused on implementing the law and doing it by the book, so the transition is smooth. Can you believe that? So everybody out there should understand what Trump can say whatever he wants, but his team is preparing for the end. And so we have to prepare for what's next too. And with that, I guess we're not going to get Bari back. Bari, thank you for being part of this team. Thank you for doing this. We appreciate you. And we will talk to you all soon. Torrin, we're good. Talk to you soon, guys.